For Inside Carolina, I'm Taylor Vippolis, and joining me today to talk Carolina football, we've got a fellow Carolina football alum, now college football analyst, Michael Felder. Felder, as an alum, as somebody who cares about where this Carolina program is and might be going, what is your kind of assessment of where this Carolina football program is at right now?
You gotta get some wins, man. You got to get some wins. That's important. And then I'm sure your text messages look like my text messages, right? And folks are, and I'm not talking about fans. I'm not talking about Walmart fans. I'm not talking about people that have only been to Chapel Hill like a time or two. I'm talking about folks that we walked through those halls in Keenan. Folks who snuck their car into Keenan to try to and backed all the way up against the pillars to avoid parking tickets. I know, it's a different breed. And so getting those messages, and I've text messaged you, it's one of those things that the trajectory is not right. It's not correct at all. And I think the big key here is this is a team that coming into the season, and I was at ACC kickoff for media days, and I was there and got a chance to talk to Max Johnson, which was amazing. And we were told that it was a robust, competitive quarterback battle. And then Max goes down. Harold comes out, and okay, now it's not him. Now it's a guy that was at UNC, transferred, couldn't play there, transferred back, and now he's our guy. And I will say this: Criswell has played. I think he's played some pretty good football. In spots, he hasn't been perfect, but I think he's played some pretty good football. Obviously, UNC has one of the better running backs in the country, in Omarion Hampton. I think that the answer here is on the other side of the ball, or the answer. I don't think it's the answer. The question is what's going on the other side of the ball, and what's up with this defense. And obviously, we've seen Power Eccles make a few plays, but at the end of the day, this is really a team that they feel like they're out in the woods defensively. And that's whether it's JMU scoring 70 or it's giving up 21 at the end of the game to the Blue Devils to lose the victory bell, which, man, that was a staple in the locker room. I'm sure it was for you too.
Yeah.
And there's folks that don't know that lives in that locker room, and you ring it. And it's one of those things that matters. So figuring out, and I say this all the time, TV, I say this, defense is two things. Now, the third thing can help elevate your defense, but defense is effort and understanding. That's it. Why do you, does anyone think that Iowa is more talented than UNC?
No.
Right. But how come their defense keeps doing the things the right way? Because it takes effort and understanding. And so you got to figure out which one of those you got to fix. And maybe it's 50-50, maybe it's 60-40, but effort you need. You need 11 hats in frame and understanding. You need someone, and now they got the comms in the helmet, obviously, but you need somebody directing traffic, and everyone has to respond to that.
When you're watching the Carolina Duke game where Carolina has as much success as they do in the first half, and then the second half, the team looks lost. They don't look like they have any answers. The second Duke scores to cut it to 20-7. I'm sure your text looked the same as mine. Yeah. It was kind of everybody being like, we know where this game is finishing. We've seen this trend for this team. When adversity hits, they kind of lose everything. What were you seeing schematically that Duke was able to do to find success, or schematically that Carolina wasn't able to find success? Because it felt like, especially with a Manny Diaz team, he's not really going to out-scheme you or right. out-coach you. It just felt like the same things were happening over and over to this Carolina team.
Yeah, they just went back to the JMU well, right? They're like, oh, we're not going to be who we are. We're going to be them. And that's what to me, that's what I saw, was they're like, let's just do the same things that they did. And I'm sure they had practiced it over the course of the week. And they were like, they had their script when you come in. For people that don't know, you're an offensive guy. So what are we talking? We're talking, because I'm used to 15 play scripts. but teams now are coming out with what, 20, 25 play scripts?
Yeah, that's about right.
And so I'm used to a 15 play script. Like when I was in 2003, 2004, it was a 15 play script, 2 drives basically. Now they're going longer because they're going faster. Duke started going faster. Duke also didn't allow UNC to adjust. And I think that's something, again, I mentioned the comms. I don't know if you've noticed this, not just Duke UNC, but just football overall, college football. There are some teams that let it get down to that 15-second mark. And then the quarterbacks have no idea what to do. Then there are teams that are like, we're going to go before 15 because at 15, the defense is already built to shift, built to move. And that's something that's been really interesting to me. So when I'm watching this football game, I'm just like, man, they went from tackling guys, and this is something, and I don't know if it's as schematic as you wanted me to put it, but they went from tackling guys going backward, like tackling guys where they are moving guys backward, tackling guys where they are pushing against playing at the line of scrimmage, playing right at the line of scrimmage, 2 yards, 3 yards, to dragging guys down. And that, if you're dragging guys down and if guys are dragging you down and you're an offense, that's a win for you. Because now you get that full body length of yardage. And we saw a lot of that. And then all of a sudden that dam breaks. And now what are we looking at? We're looking at touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. Well, like that's the problem.
If you're trying to assess where the blame is for Carolina, because I've seen some fans, there's kind of like this split argument where the coaches are trying to put the players in the best place, but when it's the same continued problems, eventually that falls back on the coaching and allowing that standard of football to continue, where you can't keep blaming the players if it's the same unsportsmanlike penalties. You can't keep blaming the players if the teams are going to the same schemes and beating you. If you're blame-pieing this Carolina team, how much of it goes towards the coaching and how much of it goes towards the players?
There's a sign. I don't remember whose office it was. There's a sign that I saw that, for me, holds the greatest gravity in all of college football. I don't think it holds true for the NFL, but I definitely think it holds true in college football. You're either coaching it or you're allowing it to happen. And you've heard it. I've heard it. I don't know if fans have heard that before. But the reality, the last line of that sign is, go ahead and say it. Either way, you're allowing it to happen. Yeah. And so it all goes, because these are kids. And with the transfer portal, with trying to get young guys in early, all those things, you're either coaching it or you're allowing it to happen. Either way, it's your fault. And that's the part that's not hanging a heavy, like that's not putting a huge mark on the coaching staff and saying they're doing everything wrong. It's more saying, try something new, man. Like, put somebody new in the game. If they're not going to listen to you, if you guys had MAs, there's 2 types of MAs. There are missed assignments, that's post-snap. There are missed alignments, that's pre-snap. If you have double MAs, which lead to improper gap fits, which lead to big runs, which lead to 2 guys trying to cover. If you're not, and this is the thing, this is my biggest thing with defense, right? Talk. And I don't know if the comms are messing with that. I don't know how that works, but it does. I'll ask you, you've watched them more than I have. You think they talk out there?
If they do talk, it doesn't look like it's a clean communication, because you do see some of the same confusion that's kind of plagued Carolina when Jay Bateman was the defensive coordinator.
Right.
That's carried over to when Chizik was the defensive coordinator, to now when Jeff Collins is the defensive coordinator. And that's what I've seen from some people would be like, oh, the problem is Jeff Collins. And I'm like, hey, if the problem was Chizik and the problem was Jay Bateman, this is something that's kind of carried over no matter who's been in charge of the defense.
Good defenses talk. You have to. You got to talk to each other. And to go back to the comms, it's really, and I say this as someone who's worked in television, as someone who's done radio, obviously. You've worn an IFB before, right?
Yep.
To have someone in your ear while you're trying to do other stuff, it's not easy. I would rather my guys get my signal from sideline. Everyone knows what we're doing. And if one guy doesn't know what he's doing, I can move him instead of trying to listen to somebody talking to me from the booth, somebody talking to me from the sideline, especially while I'm trying to watch an offense that wants to run tempo. That's a lot going on. And I've talked to people who have like the idea of someone talking to you trying to digest what they're talking to you about while you relay that message to somebody else while you're worried about the other team. That's hard. And I do think that they've got to figure that part out. And look, they're not alone. I will say this, UNC is not alone. This is a thing that I've noticed over the course of the college football season. Watch a college football game, not even a UNC game. Watch any game. Watch the 15-second mark on the play clock. If a team is confident and a team has a quarterback that knows what they're doing, or a team has a linebacker or a safety, depending on who has the comms, watch what they do. Those guys make sure everything's set up. And I think UNC's not there. I think that might be the biggest answer to this question.
When Carolina's schedule came out, I think one of the narratives was this is a pretty easy schedule. Carolina, the floor should kind of be that 7-8 win mark. And now when Carolina loses two of the most winnable games on that schedule in James Madison and Duke, you're kind of looking at that schedule and being like, where are Carolina going to get the necessary wins to reach this bowl game? And next up on the calendar, they're kicking off at home against Pitt on Saturday in Kenan Stadium. The line, according to DraftKings, has moved to Pitt -3. Pitt enters. They're 4-0. They have a good amount of confidence in that quarterback position. What can you tell Carolina fans that maybe haven't watched Pitt what to expect with this Pitt team?
They're going to run the football for sure. And they're going to play that little hugged up quarters. And it's going to be a problem moving the ball down the field. I think Nesbitt's been UNC's best receiver. And I understand he's not their leading receiver, but I think he's been their best pass catcher in terms of a weapon. Because I still don't think teams know what to do with him. Is he a tight end? I don't know. Like I think about this in the lens of a defensive player. And you think about it from the lens of a defensive player whenever every single play, somebody's holding up a card that's telling you 12, telling you 11, telling you, 21. And those are personnel groupings, right? The first number, running back. The second number, tight ends. Then we all know the rest of those guys are wide receivers out of the 5 that can go out and catch passes. And Nesbitt, even though in theory, when he's in the game, him and Hampton in the game, and then the rest of receivers, that's 11 in theory, but it's really 10. And he's dangerous. I wish they would be a little more dangerous in the middle of the field. And I think Pitt is going to be an interesting challenge because they do like to shade a little bit to the outside. They try to protect their edges a little bit more because those safeties, even though they play that quarters coverage, they play that like hugged up, that little creep corners, they do like to slam down. They do like to they're a part of the run fit still. So I think play action, especially with Hampton, that's important. So finding a way to hit the interior of the field, that's going to be really interesting. But can Criswell hit the middle of the field? Because every big play that we've seen him have, correct me if I'm wrong, most of them have been to the edges, right?
Yeah, for the most part.
Yeah, and so it's just very interesting to see how this shakes itself out. And Pitt is a team, I mean, they're undefeated. And nobody thought Pitt would be undefeated at this point in the season. No one. And they just are going to walk in there, and it's a big weekend in Chapel Hill. I got a bunch of friends coming into town. I'm not going to be able to make it up. I got work, but still, it's a big weekend. And so this will be I think this game for me, show me that you can adjust. They get another running back. back. You shouldn't say that. They add another running back is what you should say, Michael. So they get all this stuff, and so it's going to be really interesting to see what this looks like. And then if you go through the schedule, Georgia Tech that's a crapshoot. SMU, we just got done seeing what they did to Florida State, right? No, we don't. Okay, UVA. I'm sorry, my eyes aren't that good. UVA, which at least it's
improved.
I thought they were going to lose to the Chanticleers.
Yeah.
Florida State. That's good. Florida State.
All of a sudden, that turned into one of the most winnable games on the schedule.
They're bad. Wake Forest is also bad. But then you end up with BC and NC. BC,
feisty.
What are we going to get? And then NC State. And I'm glad this isn't an NC State show because, man, they thought this was a team that a lot of folks had kind of circled as a dark horse possible playoff team. And I mean, I don't know. Let me ask you, who's more down bad? Us or them?
Expectations wise, I would say they are.
Okay.
Just because, like you mentioned, they were kind of that dark horse going into the season. Carolina, I think there was huge question marks around the quarterback position. If you're going to struggle at quarterback, it's going to be real tough for you. So I think expectations were a lot lower in Chapel Hill. But the first month of the season has not been kind to either team.
Yeah.
And I think,
bro, that Tennessee game gotta hurt.
The one saving grace for NC State is that I think they could look across right now at UNC and being like, at the very least, we have this game at the end of the season to kind of redeem ourselves when a Carolina fan is looking at that, and it looks a lot tougher. Because even with this Pitt game, my biggest problem with this Carolina team, and when they're playing a team like Pitt or they're playing a team like Georgia Tech or Boston College or NC State, those teams have a pretty good identity of who they are and who they want to be. My biggest problem with this Carolina team right now is how wildly unpredictable they are. And if they do have a identity, it's that you don't know what team you're going to get by a quarter-by-quarter basis, by a half-by-half basis,
right?
By a phase of the game basis where Carolina has had punts blocked in back-to-back games after leading the country in punts blocked last year, the most punts blocked in the country since 2019, since Mac Brown took over, where the bar for Carolina right now, it just feels like, hey, don't make a catastrophic play on special teams and just get the ball back to the opposing team's offense. So I do think that bar is pretty low right now, and it's why I do think a lot of Carolina's problems trace back to coaching. And if I had a bet and the Carolina season continues on this downward trend, and I do think there's something too where you're not as bad as you might think you are, and Carolina might be a few plays from turning some of these losses into wins. But if this trend continues, I don't think Mac Brown finishes the season as head coach. That's not any inside information or anything. That's just my prediction and seeing and trying to project out where the season's going. And I'm trying to look for wins. And I'm like, I don't see too many wins. And I think the heat is going to keep getting turned on inside that building. And you had that bizarre scenario after the James Madison game where he's basically asking the team, am I the right coach for this program?
Right.
And once you're publicly getting to that point, I think it's hard to avoid those conversations of who the next coach is going to be. And since you have this more national mindset when it comes to college football, who would you say if Carolina does replace Mac Brown this offseason, who are some of the names that Carolina fans can begin looking at from a college football perspective and being like, these are not only realistic coaches for Carolina, but coaches that you could see coming to Chapel Hill and trying to turn the program around?
I mean, Jamie Chadwell, for one. He's at Liberty, was at Coastal. Like, Jamie Chadwell brings good juice, good energy. Love that out of him. So I think he'd be on my list. here's the problem. What we're looking at is this massive distortion is not even the right word. There's different levels, right? Because of money. UNC's got money, but UNC doesn't have money like the Big Ten teams and the SEC teams. But what you want to have is someone that can do it. So Chadwell was my immediate answer. And obviously Chadwell's a guy that coached Grayson McCall. Grayson McCall's at NC State. But Chadwell would be that's my first call. And then I start looking at coordinators. And I think that's an interesting part. And it's an interesting element. Like, what do you want in a coach? What do you think? Because it's twofold. What do you want in a head coach? What do you want that head coach to be? I think Curt Cignetti at Indiana is another one that's good, which is wildly ironic because Frank Cignetti, his brother, was the offensive coordinator when I was at UNC.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Curt Cignetti is a good one. Willie Fritz is another one that's very good. I like Willie Fritz. So that's three guys. Like, that's what I'm looking at. But what do you think people want? You want somebody that's going to shake hands and kiss babies? That's Mac Brown, right? That's what he does.
Yeah.
He's really good at that. Do you want to chase down this Saban guy who's like, don't talk to me, I do football? But I don't think UNC fans are going to respond very well to that. That's not a thing they're going to respond to. And there are places that respond to things differently. And I think we do have to put that into our thought process, because there's a lot of guys. I mean, Chip Kelly's still out there. Chip Kelly's a hell of a football coach. But the reality is you got to get someone that's going to want to, walk out onto center court at the Dean Dome, wave hands at the Blue Hairs, shake hands with them, and then, do all the rigmarole that goes into it. And it's something that I don't think a lot of folks realize. It's something that I don't think fans at Michigan, I don't think people at Michigan, Notre Dame, that's another school. You have to do all those things that come with it. And not every coach is not into that. And that's the part that's going to be interesting to me, is how this works out. And I'm not throwing dirt on Mac's grave. Mac, look, man, I still got a Dre Bly jersey from when I was a kid at my mom's house. So Mac ain't wrong. He can pick them. I just think it's really interesting to see what this looks like, because you got to figure it out. And who did I say? Willie Fritz, Curt Cignetti. I said Chadwell, Jamie Chadwell. I think those are all good coaches that can do the job. And I do think that trying a little bit different can be important. We're seeing it right now with Alabama, right? With Kalen DeBoer. No ties to that program. Didn't come from that program. Has nothing to do with that program. And he walked in, and it looks to me like those guys are enjoying playing football. It looks to me like they're playing a different brand of football where they're not scared to make a mistake. They just want to go out and make plays. And that's not Nick Saban's the greatest coach of our lifetime. Probably will end up being, when I die, he'll still be the greatest coach. But we've watched so many SEC teams, and only one is caught the lightning of chasing Nick Saban, and that's Georgia. And we know the wild advantages that Georgia has. One, being in the state of Georgia. Two, getting the guy that stayed with Nick Saban for a long time to make it work. So for me, I think that they've got to find a guy that's going to come in with his own system, come in with his own, approach to handling kids. But also someone, again, who is going to be willing to be a part of the community. Chapel Hill is a very unique environment. And you have to be willing to be a part of that community to make things work. And I think that's very important.
Carolina back in action this Saturday against Pittsburgh, kicking off at noon from Kenan Stadium on ESPN2. Felder, appreciate the time as always. You can follow him on Twitter at In the Bleachers. Appreciate everybody watching and listening, and we'll see how this team responds.